Moms aren't villains. At least that's what most people have to tell you sometimes, even when we know the truth. Of course, I'm joking about that a bit, mostly since that's only sometimes most of us call our moms villains for taking away our privileges or being too demanding. But for most of Disney's cases, they usually are supporting characters who raise the heroes at times alongside their fathers. But that hasn't always been the case, because the fact is, moms can be villains depending on the circumstances, as we will see here. The ones that raise their children for nefarious purposes on some occasions, or even those who actually aren't villainous but antagonistic in their parental roles. And this is what this video seeks to be about, explaining the types of ways that moms affect the plot of a hero in such roles, how they are not holy figures but also flawed, as much as their children are in some way. Now this won't be a long list, and it'll only focus on a few since there are just a few, but their impact on the stories cannot go unnoticed at all, because this fact actually begins at the very beginning of Disney with the evil queen and Snow White. Now of course, she isn't her real mom, but she is in fact Snow White's stepmother as queen, and family still is family. In this regard, you'll note that the more villainous moms happen to be stepmothers and stepfamilies, and the ones that we will also talk about that are actually blood-related moms are more parental, good-intentioned antagonists, which to be frank, we have to stress that not all stepfamilies are like this, of course. You wouldn't want Disney to give you that impression regardless of these characters, even if most people do joke about them at times, especially stepmoms. But the general idea is that it's not what matters in blood, it's what matters in character, because the nature of individuals, regardless of where you come from, is that some people do tend to be self-centered and not as caring as most are. Again, since most Disney moms are known for being most caring of their children overall, like real life, some can actually show their darker side that are certainly realistic, and the ones that have to be covered in the broader view of human nature. And so to start at the very beginning, we go back to Evil Queen from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. She isn't just the first major Disney villain, she's the first time Disney ever showed us a mother figure who isn't warm, protective, or selfless. She's a stepmother, yes, but also the story treats her as Snow White's only living parental figure after the king remarries, or whatever the fact happens in the plot. And from the moment she steps into the role, her priorities are crystal clear. Herself first, and everyone else second, or maybe not even at all. The background here is simple but telling. The king, Snow White's father, dies or is simply absent, and the new queen inherits the throne and a child. On paper, she should be raising her, but in practice, she barely acknowledges her existence and makes her work as a maid, until the magic mirror starts giving answers that she doesn't like. That's where her real parenting style comes out. This is a woman whose entire sense of worth is tied in to be the fairest of the land. Beauty isn't just vanity for her, it's power, identity, and control. When the mirror finally names Snow White as the fairest of them all, she doesn't feel mild jealousy, she feels existential threat, and her response isn't to talk to the girl or even send her away, it's to order her to be murdered. Quietly, efficiently, with the added demand of the huntsman bring back her heart in a box as proof. This is pure egotism, not the cartoonish kind, the cold calculating kind. She doesn't rage or scream in that first moment, she just decides her stepdaughter's life is less important than her own reflection. And that's where the huntsman fails. She doesn't rethink the plan, she just escalates. She transforms herself ironically into this old hag, creating the poison apple with her own hands and walks into the forest to finish the job personally. She doesn't just want Snow White gone, she wants to make sure of it. And this is the beginning of the bad side of moms in Disney in the very first film. Not the loud abusive kind, but the quiet self-obsessed kind. The kind that looks at children under their care as competition instead of responsibility. The evil queen never pretended to love Snow White, she never even pretends to tolerate her, where the girl is simply an obstacle to her self-image and obstacles that need to be removed. In that sense, she does set the template for future moms or villainous mothers. Where the fact is, the formula is that most of these characters inherit vanity, the willingness to destroy the next generation to protect their own status, the absence of maternal instinct. But she was the first, and Disney never softens her. No tragic backstory, no redeeming moment, just a woman who was given a daughter and chose her own beauty over that child's life. That's how we see the darker side of motherhood that enters into Disney canon, not with a scream, but with a mirror, a heart, and a poisoned apple. Now speaking of that, as Disney developed more stories, the role of villainy and motherhood began to expand, most notably with Cinderella and Lady Tremaine. where this story is more clear. She marries Cinderella's widowed father while the girl is still young. For a brief time, the house is still Cinderella's home, but then of course the father dies and everything changes. With no one left to protect her, Cinderella is left under Lady Tremaine's care, or authority, an authority that is absolute. And unlike the evil queen who treats Snow White as a direct threat to be erased, Lady Tremaine is colder and more practical. She doesn't try to kill Cinderella, she simply decides the girl is no longer family, and is a resourceful tool. A tool that is free labor that can be worked till the morning till the night while her own daughters Anastasia and Drizella are raised as ladies of the house. Lady Tremaine also never raises her voice much, she doesn't need to. Her control is quieter, more refined, and in many ways more complete. She strips Cinderella of her name in daily life and reduces her to her scullery maid in the household, in a system designed to keep that girl in place. Every task, every rule, every small cruelty is calculated to remind Cinderella she has no rights in her own home, only duties. When the royal invitation arrives, Lady Tremaine simply doesn't forbid Cinderella from going, she sets an impossible condition: finish every chore, find a suitable dress, knowing full well she and her daughters will sabotage it. And when Cinderella still manages to appear at the ball, Lady Tremaine's response is not only shock or even pure open rage, it's immediate cold strategy to lock the girl away, then later tried to force the glass slipper onto her own daughter's feet, no matter how obvious the lie is. This is the more developed form of maternal villainy, not the explosive jealousy of the evil queen, but the long deliberate erosion of a child's identity and freedom. Lady Tremaine doesn't need a magic mirror or a poison apple, she only needs the legal and social power of a stepmother in a world that gives her complete control once the father is gone, and she uses that power without a single moment of guilt or hesitation. In Lady Tremaine, Disney shows us a stepmother who doesn't just fail to love a child under her care, she actively converts that child into a servant, a rival to be suppressed, and a tool to advance her own daughters. It is the day-to-day destruction of a girl's life carried under the title of a mother. And this brings us to the more recent major example of a villainous mom, being of course Mother Gothel from Tangled. She combines almost every trait we saw from the evil queen and Lady Tremaine, then sharpens it into something more personal and psychological. Gothel is not a stepmother who inherits a child through marriage, she is a kidnapper who steals a baby from the kingdom, locks her in a tower deep in the forest, and spends 18 years pretending to be her mother. Rapunzel's real parents, the king and queen, are still alive, still searching, and still grieving, while Gothel knows this, but she just doesn't care. From the start, her motherhood is a performance built entirely around one goal: keeping herself young and beautiful. Rapunzel's magical hair is just this resource where the girl is the vessel. Everything else, every hug, every warning, every song is designed to protect that resource. And this is where Gothel becomes more dangerous than the ones who came before her. The evil queen wanted Snow White dead so she could remain to be the fairest. Lady Tremaine turned Cinderella into a servant so her own daughters could rise. Gothel does both at once. She isolates Rapunzel completely, just like the queen isolated Snow, and then controls every aspect of the girl's life and identity, just like Cinderella. But she adds in a third layer that the others never fully use: emotional manipulation so thorough that the child herself defends her prison. The song Mothers Knows Best is the perfect expression of this twisted motherhood. On the surface, it sounds nurturing, protective, even loving, that everyone knows that every mother does know best. But every line is gaslighting. The outside world is too dangerous, Rapunzel is too fragile, too naive, too special to leave. Only mother knows what is best for her. Only mother can keep her safe. The song wraps itself in affection and fear and care. It is the sound of a villain teaching a child to thank her for that cage. Gothel really never loved Rapunzel. She loved what Rapunzel could give to her. That moment that usefulness ends, the mask drops completely. The soft voice, the gentle touches, the maternal language, all of it disappears the second the hair is no longer hers to use as she ages into oblivion. That this is the final truth of this version of motherhood. It was always about the selfish preservation of their own beauty and youth. In Mother Gothel here, Disney takes the vanity of the evil queen and the calculated control of Lady Tremaine and fuses it into a single sustained performance of fake motherhood. She is the most complete version of the villainous mom we have ever seen, because she doesn't just fail the child under her care, she spends 2 decades convincing that child that failure is actually love. And this is something that can seem relatable to many people who've had terrible mothers. But again, not everyone is terrible, because now we're going to take a look at the antagonistic side of things. Family members who aren't villains at all, but can still fill the role of an antagonist through expectations, control, and the pressure they place on the hero. These are not evil queens, Lady Tremaines, or Mother Gothels. They don't plot murder, turn their children into servants, or steal babies for their own beauty. They in fact instead believe that they're generally doing the right thing. because good intentions don't automatically make someone right. Sometimes a parent's idea of protection becomes restriction, sometimes their version of love becomes pressure, and sometimes the very role of mother or family is used to justify decisions that hurt the child they claim to be helping. They appear to be good, they try to be good, they are good, but in the story, they are standing in the way of good. In the next sections, we're going to stress two clear examples of this, one from Disney and one from Pixar. Both stand in sharp contrast to these pure villainous mothers we've already covered. They show a different side of the quieter kind of conflict, the kind that does not come from cruelty but from someone who is wrong while they're still trying to believe that they're right. The first example is Alma Madrigal, Mirabel's grandmother and the mother of Julieta, Peppa, and Bruno. Alma is not a villain. Her entire path is paved with good intentions. She did lose her husband while fleeing in violence, received a miracle that protected her children, and spent the rest of her life trying to keep that miracle, and the family it created all safe. Everything she does comes from a place of genuine fear and love. She wants the family strong. She wants the house standing. She wants to be the one that no one ever has to suffer the way that she did. But those good intentions slowly stress the family to the point of the cracking of the house. In the first half of the film, Alma's need to protect the miracle turns into a rigid demand for perfection. Every gift must be useful, every family member must perform, and anyone who can't fit that mode is quietly pushed to the side. Mirabel, the only one without that gift, becomes the clear target of this pressure. Alma does not hate her, she simply cannot see her. She dismisses what Mirabel can do, overlooks her efforts, and treats her as the problem to be managed rather than a full member of the family. That message is very clear even if it's never said out loud. The gifted one matters more. The miracle comes first. Mirabel is the exception that the system does not know how to hold at first. And this is the antagonistic side of motherhood and family leadership. Alma is not trying to destroy Mirabel the way the evil queen or Gothel tried to destroy their charges. She's trying to hold everything together by force. She believes if she could keep every crack sealed, every gift performing, and every emotion controlled, the family will survive. But in reality, that same force is what creates the cracks in the first place. By the end, Alma finally sees what her good intentions have cost. She realized she has been focused on protecting the miracle so much that she stopped protecting the people inside it. And unlike true villains that we have looked at earlier, she does not double down. She accepts failure, softens, and begins the work of changing. That willingness to look at the damage she caused and trying to repair it is what separates her from pure villainous mothers. She was wrong, and she was never cruel by design. She was just a woman who loved her family so tightly that it almost broke them. Which leads us to the second example of Ming Lee from Pixar's Turning Red, the mother of Mei and the most easily relatable of the bunch. Ming is not a villain. She is just an overprotective mother who wants her daughter to succeed, to stay safe and make the family proud. But underneath that desire sits a deeper fear, the fear of repeating her own mother's mistakes or of becoming her. The cycle of pressure from one generation to the next is already running when the story begins. Ming's mother, Wu, held her to an impossible standard, and Ming, in turn, holds Mei to that one. The young versus old, control versus independence, tradition versus figuring out who you are is present in this film. Their relationship is tested the moment Mei's red panda's powers awaken. What should be a moment of discovery and growth becomes for Ming a crisis of control. She panics, she tries to lock the problem down, hide it, and force Mei back into the version of herself that feels safest. The obedient, high-achieving daughter who never steps outside of the lines. Every reaction comes from love and fear, not from cruelty. Yet the effect is still antagonistic. Ming cannot see that Mei is no longer a child who can be fully managed, where she is becoming something who needs space to make mistakes, feeling intensely and deciding her own path. And this is the clearest difference between Ming and the true villainous mothers we started out with. Ming uses her powers because she genuinely believes she is protecting Mei from the same pain she once felt. She is wrong about the method, but not about the love. And the film never lets her off the hook for that, but never calls her out as evil. The giant red panda is not only just a magical problem, it is the visible proof that Mei cannot be controlled the way Ming wants. And by the end, the real lesson lands on both of them. Youth needs their freedom to discover who they are, even when it's messy, loud, and inconvenient. And the mother has to learn that not everything is hers to control. Not her own daughter's emotions, not her choices, and not the exact shape of her future. Ming's journey is the opposite of villainous moms. She starts off from a place of rigid, well-meaning control and is forced to loosen. That willingness to change, even while it is hard and humiliating, is what keeps her on the antagonistic side of the spectrum rather than a villainous one. So in the end here, we see that villainy or antagonism can come in many forms for both good and bad reasons. Sometimes it is pure selfishness, in the evil queen's vanity, Lady Tremaine's control, or in Mother Gothel's manipulative performances. These mothers or stepmothers use their children under their care as tools, obstacles, or resources. Their actions lead us to the clearest wrongs of parenthood and what happens when a child's life is valued less than an adult's ego, status, or beauty. Other times it is more complicated. Alma Madrigal and Ming Lee shows us that parents and grandparents who love deeply, who want to protect and believe that they are doing right, still cause real harm through pressure, perfectionism, and the refusal to let go. Their stories teach a quieter lesson. Even good intentions can crack a family when control replaces understanding. Taken together, these characters, villainous and antagonist alike, give us a broader view of how people are raised and how might we raise others. They show us the rights and wrongs of parenthood in sharp relief. They remind us that no parent is a perfect holy figure and that children are not required to accept every expectation placed upon them. From the darkest examples we learn to reject, or the flawed but loving ones that we can learn from that still can be repaired. We look at these stories not because we hate moms. We look at them because we love them, enough to examine the hard versions, the complicated versions, and the ones that get it wrong. That this is the real lesson. To understand these characters helps us see the difference between care and control, between protection and possession. And in that understanding, we find something worth caring for, the chance to be better, to break the worst cycles, and to keep being loving, clear-eyed, honest, and without the need for mirrors, towers, or impossible standards. I'm all done. Goodbye.